Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Middle East Forum's weekly podcast series. My name is Anaf Kalam, and I will be moderating today's discussion. Now, the Kurds in Iran lag behind their co-ethnics in Iraq, Syria, and Turkey in terms of assessing their rights. The movement for Kurdish autonomy has gained visibility, but is limited by fragmentation, and the Islamic Republic views Kurdish activism as a national security threat. How should the international community engage with the Kurds of Iran? Would external support bolster their cause or further escalate the repression? And how does Kurdish activism affect the regime's stability? Joining us today to provide her insights on this topic is Shukriya Bradost, an Iranian-Kurdish security analyst who is a non-resident scholar at the Middle East Institute and a regular contributor to the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, as well as writing for outlets such as Al Jazeera, the Jerusalem Post, and The Observer. She's also a regular TV commentator on the BBC, Voice of America, Iran International, and many other outlets across many different languages, with English actually being her fourth language. Ms. Bradost will speak for 15 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of Q&A from the audience. And if you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Shukriya Bradost.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today to talk about the Iranian Kurd, or the Kurds in the Iranian part of Kurdistan, the longest resistance and struggle in the Middle East that have been ignored by international community and Western countries in comparison to their kin ethnic groups in neighboring countries such as Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. Although we know Kurds in these countries have been brought to international debate or spotlight when a major change happened in the Middle East, or like what happened from the first Persian Gulf War, Iraqi Kurds being the topic of in the American and the Western country, how they can support Kurds in Iraq. Then we know right now we have Kurds in Syria in the spotlight of the international community and Western country talking about how we can support the Kurds in Syria, which we know Kurds in Syria have been suffering for decades under the Assad regime. After that, Bashar Assad, both Assad's father and son's regime for a long time. And now we see this major change in Syria brought the Kurds in Syria under a spotlight. And before that, we know the war against ISIS was the reason we heard in the Western society about the Kurds in Syria. But Kurds in Iran, they are the one that been fighting for their right, longest fighter for their right in the region. Why they been ignored by Western society? What is the reason? For saying that, I have to go back to the history and give the root of that cause. But before that, I want to say both administration that we have in Iraqi Kurdistan and Syrian Kurdistan tells the world, and not just Western society, that when they come into the Middle East, they have these both administration as an example that Kurds are the people they are more closer to Western value of secular, they are more secular, more peaceful people that can live with the diversity of the society, diverse ethnic groups and religious groups. The best example, as I said, the Iraqi Kurdistan, you can see the best experience in the Middle East, how different religious groups have been practiced under the ruling of the Kurds, or the Syrian Kurdish administration, showing that, which is not the first Kurdish administration or Kurdish governing history or experience. Kurdish governing goes back to, modern governing goes back to Iranian Kurdistan, when they established the first Kurdistan Republic in Mahabad in Iranian Kurdistan in 1946. That we just passed the anniversary of this establishment of this short-lived government a few days ago. It was 79 years ago Kurds established this modern secular government in the Kurdistan of Iran. But the why I want to address this history of this Kurdish government in Mahabad in Iran. I want to tell the audience about the end of this government. How it ended has a really significant and crucial lesson for right now that we're living in the area, that Middle East, most of the militia group, most of the non-state actor using human as a shield to protect themselves. But when Kurds in the Middle East, in 79 years ago, their leader, Qazi Muhammad in Mahabad, he surrendered to the Pahlavi monarchy, Muhammad Reza Shah Pahlavi monarchy, when they've been defeated in Kurdistan. He surrendered to protect his people. Then, unfortunately, he was executed by Muhammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. But this is the lesson that shows you how the Kurdish leader and political party, they don't use people as their shield to protect themselves. They become the shield to protect their population in Kurdistan. But when I'm talking about I want to answer the question that I asked first, why Iranian Kurds being ignored by international community and Western society. What I mean when I say that goes back to the historical cause. Because the Kurdish struggle in Iran goes back between the conflict between both Ottoman and Safavid Empire. This geopolitical between these two empires, the division that shaped the border between today's two countries of Iran and Turkey. The Safavid centralization effort in the beginning of the 17th century marked the first targeted attack on Kurds for their ethnicity, including forcing conversion to the Shia Islam. Kurdish identity become a marker of resistance against the Safavid or Iranian ruler in the beginning of the 17th century. So when you look at the first genocide against Kurd as Kurdish group as their identity, it happened in 69 by Iranian ruler, by Safavid Empire, but you not find this one in the Western academia or research. The reason that academia or Western society been silent about this genocide happened against Kurds in Iran, because they were allied with the Safavid Shia Empire against Ottoman Sunni Empire. That's why we haven't heard about this genocide. The first research that I have done is going to be published soon in August, is one chapter about the genocide of Kurds that happened those days and why international community supported Safavid Shia Empire and choose to be silent about this catastrophe that have an influence until today. You can, for these sources that I'm mentioning, how they genocide Kurds, how they inhumanize Kurds in the rhetoric, you can look at the Safavid books that been written by Safavid clinical, like Tarikh Alamare Abbasi, history of the Abbasid Empire. In this book, they talk about that how Kurds are not human. So dehumanizing of the Kurds starting from that period. But after this genocide, we have a demographic change in Iranian Kurdistan, that today we are facing this problem of demographic change in this Kurdish region of Iran. During that time of genocide, Iranian ruler, they brought Shia Turk to the Kurdish region, and they changed the demography. Then this demography until today is one of the Iran national security problem. Iranian regime have been using this demography change to put division among Kurds and Turks, putting both ethnic groups against each other. Since Kurds are the Sunni Kurds and the Azeri Turk are the Shia Azeri Turk, they are more closer to central government, so they have a more control of the power, economy, and military sources, and they've been used by government against Kurds in this region. That's why even right now we're talking the tension of ethnic conflict in Iran is in the highest degree in this part of Iran, that I said how demography of this region was changed during the Safavid Empire. Then this discrimination, this pressure against Kurd that started with the Safavid, continued by Qajar Empire, then by Pahlavi, after Pahlavi by Islamic regime of Iran. During the first establishment of the first Iran even constitution, 1906, that was followed by European constitution. It's supposed to be a more modern constitution. When the nation of Iran was defined in this constitution, they defined as a Shia followers, and they call it Iranian nation and people inhabiting Iran. I mean, the nation are defined in this constitution as a Shia followers, so Kurds were majority Sunni, so they're already excluded. That's why I call it the exclusive political system of Iran, that this exclusive political system of Iran established by first constitution in 1906, continued by Pahlavi monarchy, and then by Islamic regime second constitution, this exclusion continued. And during the Pahlavi, when he started establishing the nation state of Iran, which I call it incomplete nation state, these nation state exclude Kurd again, not just as a religious, but as an ethnic identity too, because the few law was passing during the first Pahlavi, Reza Shah Pahlavi, in Iranian parliament. They inhabited Kurdish culture, language to assimilation, to do the assimilation of this ethnic group and create the united Iran with one identity. That identity is a Persian ethnic group's identity, Persian ethnic group's history, language, and all belong to the Persian, which is followed by Nazism ideology in Germany, that the group of Iranian scholars, they brought this ideology to Iran. This group of Iranian, they call it Berlin Circle intelligentsia, in Iranian intelligentsia in Western country. They brought this unification of the identity of Iran to this country. That's how this incomplete nation state was established in Iran. And Iran, we know it was an empire with the old history, with a diverse society, with a different ethnic, religious group. They turned this empire to the nation state with one identity of one of the ethnic groups, which in academia we call it dominance ethnicity group. When dominant ethnicities groups identity become the state's identity, so it become the state national security, then other ethnic groups demands for their identity, for their ethnicity become a threat to this national identity. That's how the securitization of the Kurds and other ethnic groups' identity become a threat to Iran national security. That this policy, for sure, we don't have that much time to go to the details how the measure of the securitization happened during Reza Shah by destroying all these books with different language, prohibiting all different culture to practice all this identity. They try to assimilate. As I said, assimilation policy was implemented during the Reza Shah and then continued by his son Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi. And then Islamic regime and a revolution was an opportunity. When the revolution in 1979 became an opportunity for this ethnic group to fight for their right and supported the change in Iran, Khomeini wasn't really clear about what is his goal for ethnic groups in Iran. He tried to say we are all Muslim, and in Muslim countries, all ethnic groups, all different groups have a same right. But when and then he actually received the support from all different ethnic groups to change the regime in Iran. The Kurds hope that they can have a freedom for Iran and autonomy for Kurds. But when Khomeini controlled all the power, what he did, he declared jihad against Kurds and didn't accept none of these Kurdish demands for autonomy and called them infidel, and become the first Muslim leader in the world history that declaring jihad against his own Muslim population in Iran, which Khomeini declared jihad against Kurds. This declaration of the jihad against Kurds caused a catastrophic death and destroying the for Kurdish population in Iran, and destroying more than 100 village of Kurdistan, and killing, as a human right research shows, report shows that more than 10,000 Kurds were killed between 1979 and 1983. And 83, these military struggle of Kurds ended, and the Kurdish military groups or Peshmerga left Iranian Kurdistan to Iraqi Kurdistan, and they changed their policy and the strategy of war against Iran. They started more civil resistance, focusing more on civic society inside of Iran and not using the military struggle against the regime. That's how we see this right now. We have this mostly successful strike in Iranian Kurdistan that the few days ago, that was the last strike of Kurds in Iran against Iranian regime's order to execute two Kurdish women, Warisha and Pakshan, which was political prisoner Iranian jail, and as a human right, UN human right officer, mentioned that Iranian Kurds are the largest group of political prisoner in Iran. But I know my time is over, but I will have a few points and I will leave it for the Q&A's part to answer the question. Iranian-Kurdish party and Iranian Kurdistan become the center for Iranian opposition. They are the most mobilized people. And there are reasons, as I say, behind this mobilization, successful mobilization in this part of the Iran, that become the reason the Iranian regime trying to attack these groups, this part, because they know this is the Achillean heel of the Islamic regime. If any change happen to Islamic regime, the change goes through the Kurdistan region. I'm sure I left a lot of questions for your audience to ask. I'm ready to answer your questions.
Right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights. The historical context you've provided here is very helpful as well, as it kind of helps frame the modern context. Now, the most prominent instance that we're familiar with, at least here in the West, is that of Jinnah or Mahsa Amini, who was killed at the hands of the Islamic Republic a few years ago. How influential has this event been for the movement, and is the momentum still going strong?
It was a historical opportunity. It's a historical opportunity for Iranian to unite. And it was for first time that other part of Iran have a solidarity and united with the Kurdish part. And the slogan, the protest originally comes from Kurdistan, supported with other part of Iran. That was we call it in politics, that was a political earthquake for Iranian regime. And then when they saw that, they knew that, as I mentioned, with this history background of the Kurds, they knew that if this region have other part of Iran support, the change is coming. The regime cannot stand. That's why they continue this propaganda, this policy of creating an Kurd as a enemy of the Iran integral territory, as a terrorist group, as a separatist group, that you never find this separatism rhetoric and none of the Kurdish political parties' goal. They always talking about the Kurdish right for governing inside Iran territory. But the regime's trying, that's not the new actually. I will give you one of the example, your audience may be shocked with this example. Imagine Iranian pilot on a national TV in Iran in front of this old national audience, sitting the program and telling the people that the Kurds eating pilot meat. That's how they trying to dehumanize Kurds in front of the population. I have my own story. During the Women Life Freedoms Uprising, I met with a few women. That was their first time talking to a Kurd in Iran. They say when I was one of the girls, she's one of the actually well-known Iranian activists in Germany. She told me when I was kid in Tehran, whenever there are like a Kurdish region is the most undeveloped region in Iran. So they always go to the different part of Iran to find job. So they went to the Tehran as a labor, cheap labor, like a low people. And she said when I was a kid, I was going to school. There are many Kurds in that part to finding as a labor standing there for people to pick them up for job. And she said my father told me, oh, stay away, they are Kurds. They cutting people's head. The girls grow up with that mentality. And then when women life freedom happened, that was a revolution for her too. I'm telling her as one of the example that how this revolution is, I call it the Iranian Renaissance actually. Not just Renaissance against this Islamic fundamentalistic regime, also for they opening their eyes for the more democratic, more secular society and accepting each other identity. But for answer your question, is it still alive, is still working? The change started with that revolution, with that uprising, women like freedom, is continue. Yes, for sure, Islamic regime being successful to interfere and integrate this propaganda, this idea against Kurd among part of the Iranian opposition diaspora. And then we're talking about the regime putting $1 million in the social media because it is Khamenei supreme leader's order that he ordered for the social media jihad. When he ordered the social media jihad, he put in $1 million of Iranian source to use the social media for the regime propaganda and goal. One of these propaganda's goal is attacking Kurdish identity, Kurdish political party. It's been kind of really successful. Unfortunately, some part we have to be realistic, but yeah, the women life freedom at least change part of Iranian opinion about Kurds in Iran.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Now, we've heard much about genocides and persecution of Kurds by Sunni Muslims, from Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party to the Islamic State, etc. And you touched on this briefly when you discussed the Ayatollah Khomeini's jihad against fellow Kurdish Muslims. What are some of the unique religious components in the Shia persecution of Kurdish minorities in Iran, and how do they differ from those under Sunni powers?
The difference is Iranian regime in Khomeini's rhetoric, even Khamenei, the clergy rhetoric, they believe that Shia Islam is real Islam, and we are all infidel actually. I grew up and I born and raised in Iran. I went to school there. I finished my first diploma and got accepted in the medical school as we talked before the program. So one of my religious book in the high school, second year of high school, is a religious book. In this book, as a Sunni, I sit down in that class and read this book, that the real Muslim are Shia Muslim and the Sunnis like representative, like we call it Khalifa. This Khalifa of Sunni Muslim, they are the betrayal of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad's wife was, I don't want to use the word, you can put it whatever you want, they use it for the wife of the Prophet. And one of my even mom cousin was killed in the jail because he just wrote a book about the Prophet Muhammad's wife Aisha and called her al Mu'minin, I mean mother of the Muslimin. So he was a judge, he was arrested, and 2 weeks after he was arrested, they say he had a heart attack on jail and passed away. That's how. And then when you look at the Sunni Muslim in Iran, Iran is the only country that its capital city doesn't have a Sunni mosque. Tehran doesn't have a Sunni mosque until now. We're talking, and interesting that we're talking about the Shia Islamic regime against all Sunni practice in Iran, but supporting Sunni ideology, Islamic ideology in Iraqi Kurdistan, in Turkey, in Syria, among Kurds, which I have all data and information that Iranian policy paper talking about how we can separate more Islamic radical ideology among Kurds in Iraq. So bring the nationalism feeling down and replace with the Islamic ideology. So then Kurds who has this background of the being secularism, we can push them to more religious population. And even Iranian Kurdistan, there are like a movement, it's called Salafit Islamic movement in Iranian Kurdistan. The mosque of some city like Piranshah, Sardash, the border city, you will go to the mosque, you will see the Salafis Islamic ideology is allowed in some mosque. They even paid by the government to spread this ideology among Kurds. So whenever the nationalism of Kurds is strong, Islamic regime of Iran trying to bring more secularism among them and make them to be approached to the Islamic ideology to stay away from their nationalism feeling or opinion.
Wow, very interesting. Now, you mentioned Turkey. Turkey has been taking a much more prominent role in the Middle East, particularly with the recent involvement in its backing of the militias that have taken over Syria. And the Erdogan regime is, of course, no friend to the Kurds. So, how is this new shift in power affecting the plight of the Kurds, both in Iran and across the region?
Because I will start with the Kurds in Syria. As I said, spotlight right now for international community about the Kurds in Syria. It's interesting. Iranian regime in Tehran like waiting to see when the Western, most importantly, America, leaving Kurd alone and betraying them. So then Iran can use the Kurdish power, the anger, or the betrayal feeling, use them in Syria. So is a kind of they trying for this prey when it's ready, when Americans going to leave Kurdish in Syria alone, and when this administration will be collapsed and destroyed, and all this power that Kurd, as Trump mentioning, is the best fighter in the region. So Iran, as Khamenei said, and they're planning on that, they're trying to use any collapse or any failed of the Kurdish administration in Syria as a card to join them with the Alevism and rebuild the resistant group, as Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei promised that he's going to bring back all this resistance in that axis of resistance in Iran in Syria. But what is the Turkish rule? What is the impact on Turkey? I'm not really optimistic about the change in the region. I'm afraid we will see another Islamic government in the region, which is supported by Turkey. That's why in one of my articles I'm talking about how we may face another conflict between Sunni and Shia in the Middle East, with the Turkey taking Iranian place in the Middle East, supporting Islamic groups, Sunni Islamic groups. And when you see the Syrian new government, which I'm not really naive to believe they suit and they language. I follow the rule that they follow, the law that they submit to apply to the Syrian society. The last law they're talking about how they're going to separate women and men in the bus. They cannot stand next to each other. Or they're changing the curriculum in the Syrian's education system, tells you don't be really optimistic and about this government in Syria. They're waiting for the time to make the government more strong. Then there will be another threat to stability of the region. And most important, in the neighboring with the Israelis, there will be a huge problem with Israel. And inside of the Turkey, the bad news for Turkey is that because Turkey's support for Islamic group, it will be costly for Turkey. I do believe in the future, because what we have right now inside of the Turkey, I've been working on Turkey's domestic policy since 2013. So what I see inside of the Turkey, increasing the nationalism, which we already had there, become more radical, then you adding the Islamic radical to that radical nationalism. So radical nationalism with support of the Islamic radicalism, it will be disaster for future of Turkey. That will attack Turkey from inside. Turkey may right now facing the Kurdish issue, trying to solve this issue because they think if we solve this Kurdish issue, we will have a more opportunity to expand our power, not just in the Caucasus, in the Azerbaijan, with that part of the Asia, in the Middle East. Now we feel the Kurds are the only issue we have, preventing us from become the empire, the rebuild Ottoman empires. Or if we solve this issue, then we have this opportunity. But the problem is they don't consider the feeling of this growing inside of the Turkey with this radical Islamic nationalism. And in Iran, for sure, Iran see Turkey as an old rival. And Iran has a history of supporting the Kurds in Turkey, but they changed this support. First, Iran supported the PKK in Turkey. You know, they all is my enemy's enemy is my friend. They go through this rule. They supported PKK. Then they found no Turkish Kurds in Turkey have this increasing nationalism, Kurdish identity feeling. Then they changed their support. They support for Alevism and religious in Turkey, Shia and Alevism in Turkey, which the audience can Google for all these supports Iran sent to Alevism in Turkey. And I have an article in Middle East Institute talk about all these details. They can read this article with all details about the changing Iranian narrative about the Turkey's Kurd. They don't want to have these Kurds, nationalism Kurd in Turkey, because they are the hugest population of the Kurds that live in Turkey, more than 20 million Kurds.
Right. Well, thank you. I think we have unfortunately reached the end of our podcast. I want to thank you again, Shukriya, for taking the time to give us your insights and your experiences.
Thank you very much for having me. I wish we had more time to go details, but the Middle East is a complex place. You have to have more time to talk about all details.
Now, of course, we could go for hours, I'm sure. But for our audience and for our listeners, is there somewhere where we can direct them if they would like to follow more of your work?
Sure. I'm my account Shukriya Bradost and my X or X Twitter X and my LinkedIn. They can find my publication and comments about the regional development in the Middle East.
All right, thank you. For those of you watching in the future on YouTube, I will be sure to link those in the video description below. If you've not already done so, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can watch this series as well as over 400 of our past podcast episodes. We are now also on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, and most other platforms where you can follow podcasts. We thank you all again for joining us and for your participation. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks.